Bookworm, which begins in London, with a look at the man who had even more trouble with James Bond than the KGB, his creator, Ian Fleming. Also trouble in Toyland, why no one wants to live next to Enid Blyton.
It's an unholy alliance between
class, sort of well-educated, charming, yet very dangerous.
He stood for Britain's greatness, the stiff upper lip. He worked for MI5, therefore he was in the Secret Service for the British. In a time of the Cold War, therefore the Russians, on the whole, were the enemy.
Real ladies man. Yeah.
Lady killer.
Yes. Is it here?
What?
The decoding machine, Lecter.
Must we talk about it now?
And this is what it's really like. We're inside the old MI5 building in Curzon Street, and it's just like any other civil service building, except that there are cells in the basement. Ian Fleming himself invented a sort of shorthand for this anonymous bureaucratic heroism. He called his man 007.
I've been searching London for you. 007 is here, sir. I'll see you in a minute.
Moneypenny.
Just like James Bond in the movies, Ian Fleming himself appeared to be a glamorous, self-confident, womanizing jet-setter. But unlike Bond, Fleming had an inner life and often had difficulty living up to the hero he created.
People do connect me with James Bond simply because I happen to like scrambled eggs and short-sleeved shirts and some of the things that James Bond does, but I certainly haven't got his guts nor his very lively appetite.
I think that James Bond was Ian's dream fantasy of what he would like to be, you know.
He wasn't tough, really. He got off with women because he couldn't get on with them.
Ian Fleming expressed his opinion freely and in a voluntary fashion. He said, "I am a mediocre writer."
Ian Fleming was born into a Scottish banking family in 1908. His father, Valentine, a Conservative MP, was killed in the trenches. Ian and his three brothers were brought up by their mother, Eve.
Well, he used to write poetry, and my mother thought that was all right for girls, but not for boys. And the same with music and art. You know, she thought that men had to be tough.
Certainly, the young Ian Fleming was talented, but he seemed to be a quitter. At Eton, he was champion athlete 2 years in a row, but he left early. He stuck the military academy Sandhurst for a few months, but he then ran away. He had a varied but unsettled career in adult life, which included stints in the city and at Reuters, who sent him to Moscow. He seemed to be in search of a vacation. When the war came, Fleming's background, Eton, Sandhurst, the city, smattering of Russian, made him ideally suited for intelligence. And he duly arrived here, Naval Intelligence, room 39 at the Admiralty, and took to a double life with alacrity.
I think a lot of his peacetime life did bore him terribly. His connection with the city was largely through his family, and I don't think it's what he would have chosen to do. The war simply took him away from all that and put him back into his sort of cloak and dagger world he'd always wanted to be in.
It was in this period of his life that Ian Fleming perhaps came closest to being James Bond, sending agents out behind enemy lines and developing a reputation as a handsome but ruthless womanizer.
Everybody adored him. He was very good looking, particularly in his naval uniform, and well, they all fell for him, but he treated them, well, I don't think he treated them as people, really. I think they were just events.
He was at his worst in the company of women. That is to say, I noticed that he sometimes used to make risky remarks of sexual character when women were in the room. And I put that down to some extent of his distrust or his dislike of them.
When Ian Fleming finally proposed to his longtime lover, Anne Rothermere, at the age of 44, he found the prospect of marriage nerve-wracking.
Everybody that got to know him would sooner or later be told, I took up writing to take my mind off my marriage.
In the weeks before his wedding, Fleming sat down in his Jamaican home Goldeneye and wrote the novel Casino Royale. Curiously, the James Bond of this first adventure is the most Fleming-like of them all. It concentrates on Bond's uneasy relationship with a woman he doesn't quite trust.
Somehow she had crept under his skin, and over the last 2 weeks his feelings had gradually changed. He found her companionship easy and unexacting. There was something enigmatic about her that was a constant stimulus. She gave little of her real personality away, and he felt that however long they were together, there would always be a private room inside her which he could never invade.
In those early days, it was all somehow like fun, that Ian was writing these books for fun, and it only began to be more serious as time went on.
Ian Fleming wrote 11 more Bond books. They not only became bestsellers, but were turned into blockbusting movies. Eventually, Bond's influence reached into the world of spying itself.
The KGB officers started to think, all right, it's all maybe fiction, but all fiction is based on some reality. And the technology is so developed in the West, in Britain, that probably some of those things really can be produced. It gave an impulse to the technical services of the KGB in Moscow, stimulating them to development of more and more sophisticated KGB products, like poisons, guns, self-shooting pens as well.
The success of Bond was phenomenal. The book sold 32 million copies worldwide and spawned a global merchandising industry. Fleming, already in fragile health, had to work harder and harder to satisfy the demand he created.
James Bond was first a toy to him, and then I think that James Bond became the master, and Ian became the toy, really.
Is it possible that one of these days we'll read a James Bond novel in which the hero was killed at the end?
I couldn't possibly afford it.
I think that Bond killed him.
In the end, one of the great achievements of the James Bond books as opposed to the films is the sort of secret torment of James Bond behind the suave exterior. And it's certainly true that Ian Fleming himself was constantly trying to be something that he wasn't. He lived beyond his means, financially, socially, and emotionally. It's ironic, perhaps, that what killed Ian Fleming made his hero, Bond, immortal.